Quist.
Here.
Mr. Dorschel.
Here.
Mr. Ganser.
Here.
Mr. Stein.
Here.
Mr. Hamburg.
Here.
All right, item 3 is approval of minutes from the May 11th meeting. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
A second?
Second.
All right, any additions, deletions, or changes? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? And minutes have been approved. Are there any appearances for an agenda item not, or an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, we will close the appearance section, and there is no unfinished business tonight, so we can move on to 6A, which is a public hearing on a request by the Aldo Leopold Nature Center, represented by Josh Burken, Facility and Grounds Manager, for a zoning permit at, for a storage shed at 300 Femright. You want to join us up here? And so the first section is just to give us an overview of what the project is, and for an opportunity for public hearing, then we can close that and move on to the consideration piece.
Okay. Well, the purpose of this shed, it's a 28 by 32 storage shed, and right now we don't have. It's really a threefold. It will solve 3 problems for us. First, we don't have anywhere to put the lawnmower or gas equipment. Because we can't put it inside, and so right now currently we just have it chained up outside, and that, you know, for vandalism or stealing some of our more expensive equipment. Second, general storage for us, and then third, for setting up for events and doing major events like Maple Fest and other things that we do. We need some space to get stuff prepped and ready to go. So that's our main overview for it. Is there anything else that you'd like to?
That's good, and if you just want to hang there in case there are questions when we move
Sure.
on. So I see no one here to speak regarding the public hearing section, so I will close 6A and move on to 6B, which is a consideration of action on the request by Aldo Leopold Nature Center for the approval of the zoning permit for a storage shed.
The property zone community design district, and new construction or additions in this district require approval of a zoning permit by the Plan Commission. That's why it's here tonight, and staff's recommendation is for approval.
All right, commission members, are there questions for the applicant?
I'll just note that Josh showed me the location in person out there, and it's nicely tucked away. Difficult to see really from any angle. And so the location's very considerate, if you will. So it looks good.
Others? Chris?
If this were a single-family residence, we wouldn't even be talking about it. The building inspector would issue a permit and you'd be good to go. It's underneath the size for a single-family residence, and it's going in a major piece of land. I can't imagine. I think we're here because of protocol.
I did want to mention, you talk about storing the lawnmower. Isn't the director's office available for that?
No comment.
Smart man, smart man. So, all right, seeing any other questions? Seeing none? All those in favor of
Need a motion.
Oh, sorry, thank you.
Move approval, conditions recommended by staff.
Excellent. Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? It passes. Congratulations. Go build a shed. Were you like trying to clear the mower? Yeah. You're.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
So we can move on to 6C, which is the review of the utilities and community facility element of the comprehensive plan.
This is our second to last element. After this, we just have implementation. So the purpose of the utilities and community facilities element is to provide information on our existing utilities and facilities, and any future needs, and if applicable, a timeline for new or expanded facilities. It starts with utilities. We can just go through it from the beginning, address questions as we go.
Uh,
I get,
Go for it, Rob.
you're gonna start with 4-1?
Yeah, why don't we hop through each section and maybe do one section at a time and have folks chime in if they have additions to it. So Rob, sounds like
Second
willing to get us
paragraph,
started?
300 to 800. I think that sentence could just be taken out since we have the exact depths right below it.
Any other concerns in that paragraph? So I have a variety, I know you can only imagine, a variety of suggestions, and some of them are less about the content and more about the order or arrangement of it. So I was going to do those in a track changes and get those to Sunny, so maybe for a future piece, if we do our first blush and then if there's the changes to come back. So I'll try not to state all of them, but when the addition or concern I had here was when it talks about total capacity of the 3 wells, are we talking about the combined holding capacity, which is different than the pumping capacity, if I understand that correct?
I should also mention, to preface this, is that I had the public works staff review their applicable sections, and then fire, police, library, community media, each on their applicable sections. So I'm not an expert on wells, but in this particular sentence, I think it's the holding capacity of the 3 wells, and then pumping capacity is later in that paragraph.
Okay.
Well, a well doesn't have a holding capacity.
Well, yeah, a reservoir does.
A
and I
reservoir, a water tank, but a well doesn't.
And that's where I think they are interchanging the well tapping the reservoir with.
I think a total capacity might be different than a pumping capacity, and sometimes a pump, if I have a pump that's rated at 200 gallons per minute with a certain hydraulic head, it'll only pump 85 or 120. So I think if we're getting the numbers from Public Works and they're comfortable with them, there could be a disparity there based on the head. If you have the same pump 800 foot in the ground for that one well versus 300 for the other, it'll pump a lot more water, being a shallower well, because it's got a lot less pressure to work against. So I know where you're getting at. You're getting at the 2 different numbers that don't match, because you hate that when that happens.
I do. So I'm fine with their.
I'd ask
edits.
Public Works just to confirm.
Okay.
And if there is a discrepancy, maybe a quick explanation on that, or take one or the other out that doesn't mean anything.
Okay.
The only other move I thought about is in the first paragraph, that the last 2 sentences about our drinking water safe and meets all these requirements. It seems like it's more connected with this second paragraph rather than the first paragraph. So some minor edits beyond that. Anything else on page 1, element 4.1? Seeing none, we'll go on to the top of page 2. I know it's a continuation of 4.1. Is there anything here? Seeing none with others, the asterisk for the table, I don't know what that is referring to. If it's referring to the whole table, that this table is assuming that the old tower is offline, which I know is true, and well 1 reservoir volume is not available because of a pump limitation.
I believe the asterisk should reference
The usable storage.
storage, and I missed that.
And anywhere in here do we talk about well 1 reservoir volume about a booster pump?
No, I don't think I explained that in here, but I took it from our water supply study. So I can either provide clarification or
Either way.
more. Yep.
All right. And then the other changes I have more are fairly minor, and I'll send an email to save us time here. Moving on to 4.1.2, Stormwater Management. Are there changes or recommendations?
I don't have change, but I just think it's fair to see this in a table is really an eye-opener to see 5 of the top 10 priority watersheds are in Monona.
Oh, yeah, of the outfalls?
Yeah, I think that's nice to have in there. I was shocked. I didn't know that. For all the people that feed into these lakes and the system, that we have 5 of the most impactful outfalls for TSS loading.
It's huge.
It is big.
And
It
I
is
think
big.
it connects with some of the different projects that we're able to leverage other monies outside of the city.
Absolutely, but then at the same time, we're in compliance with our MMS, or with our MS4, MSM, MS4,
yeah.
whatever. It's shocking that we can have that many that are delivering that level of pollutants into the lakes, yet we're still in compliance.
Yeah.
I mean, when I read this, that's what I got out, is how can we have that much pollutant load being delivered to the lakes, yet we're still in compliance with our MS4s, is it?
MS4, yep.
Yes. All right.
But as far as comprehensive plan goes, it gives us some good goal material.
Moving on to the next page, 4.3 at the top. Any edits that folks have or suggestions? The paragraph about all properties within the city contribute. I wonder if we would consider deleting that paragraph. And my reasoning is this gets into how the city has shifted its calculation to do this. And despite it looking very simplistic of, oh, we calculate the amount of impervious surface and charge it that way. It's true, but not all parking lots and driveways, et cetera, are impervious, and we get into very subtleties. And I don't know if it adds any contribution to the section. I'd be interested in others' thoughts on that.
Which sentence are you at?
The deleting the paragraph after the bulleted information at the top.
What page are you on?
4.3.
Oh, I thought we'd switched over there. Okay,
Oh,
thanks.
sorry.
Okay. Well, that's true that they contribute based on total impervious surface area, because a pervious pavement wouldn't be counted.
You would think.
Yes.
So the way our new calculation is done, however, so let's say you put in a driveway that has pervious material, they still calculate it from an aerial view of what appears to be impervious.
But then you can go contest it, correct?
You can go.
So I think it's accurate. That doesn't mean we don't miss things once in a while, but it's accurate as we charge, at least most municipalities charge based on impervious and pervious, and there's quite a ratio between the two. We charge a small fee for pervious and a much larger fee for impervious, correct?
Yeah, and then there are a few other factors of slope and odd stuff.
Right, because of the runoff rate, yeah. I think it should be in there, because if I'm reading that as a property owner, I see that, oh, wait, I'm getting charged for that. That'd be a key for me to go in and contest it. Some people don't realize they can contest it, but I understand you do it through your GIS mapping, right? And you do the best job you can. And some things are missed, but that's where every property owner has to be proactive for their own.
We're opening up a can of worms is what you're doing, right?
Well, I am, but it's because I'm part of a different conversation, and
Yeah.
I think that's why I want some feedback here of if it adds some value, and I hear Chris's kind of addition of how it can be helpful for
I
someone.
work with this stuff a lot, but I love seeing it here because most people don't even understand what a stormwater utility district is for or what it does. And I think for a lot of people, just a little bit of explanation might be helpful as to what it is, what it does. Above and beyond just the pervious versus impervious, to know why they're being charged that money to clean up the water. And I think a lot of people feel a lot better when they realize where the money's going.
You've made a
Just a
believer
thought.
out of me. Others?
I think it should be in there too. I think it's a logical way of calculating the fee, and that we do it shows that we are attentive to the causes of the stormwater, which is what we're trying to compensate for. So I think it serves a purpose in here.
All right. Other suggestions on this page? Seeing none, we'll move on to page 4.4. Any suggestions? So the first one I have is about the city will renew its MS4 permit in 2015 and may include higher, well, we don't know those numbers now. However, by the time this is published, we will have those numbers. Well, it is hopeful that we will have those numbers. So the suggestion is that we edit it to make sense if we have those numbers by then. The second paragraph, the very last sentence about we provide an overall 40% reduction in TSS and 25.8 in TP. Like, we should be leading with that. That's doing a great job. Like,
Oh, for a municipality, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
and rather than having that tucked in at the very end, if there was a way to lead off with that information and then follow up with the details, that might be nice.
But doesn't that paragraph explain how, will an average reader get that, with leading with that statement?
It might have to modify some of the components about, because of current management practices and city operations, we've been able to provide an overall 40% reduction in TSS. I mean, it might have to have a little wording change to lead off and then gather that.
That's what the paragraph's talking about. If you want to give it more import, would we maybe just have that paragraph and then have a third paragraph that would lead with that? That could start out based on this updated analysis and highlight it. So you have at the beginning of a paragraph and find one more sentence. You have to have at least 2 sentences in a paragraph. Find another sentence. But Brian, it would give you the impact you want, but it would make sense to the reader because they'd flow through the other information first.
Sounds good. You've caught my eye of why I want to pull it out. Others, if we move on to solid waste and disposal and recycling. So some general pieces I had around this is, do we want to identify folks that we are contracted with as providers in this moment in time, given that this is going to last over a period of time?
Oh, I think you're right. I hadn't thought about that. That's a good idea.
I wonder if there's a way.
City contracts with a provider to offer free brush collection.
Yeah, they don't need to know who it is in this document.
That's a good point.
And then there were some minor suggestions I had in the second section about we don't need to describe that. Well, one suggestion could be to strike things like the city also has 4 vacuum trucks to collect curbside leaves beginning in October. I don't know if we need to describe that the trucks that we have, and this is a section about disposal. So it could be something like curbside leaf collection begins in October through the first measurable snowfall. In addition to the curbside collection, a yard waste drop-off site for leaves, grass clippings, and garden waste is located at the Public Works garage. So taking out some of the pieces about
You
what
don't
equipment we own.
you
at
don't
this
date the
moment.
document.
I can do that.
So there are a few of those in here.
We should
think-
do the same for,
In general, rather than identify advanced disposal specifically, we could just differentiate between a private service provider and a service that the city provides. Because I think that's important to note.
Others in 413? All right, seeing none, we'll go 414. Any suggestions here?
It's all yours.
is there any,
Did you have something, Rob?
is there any information on the 25 by 25 goal? Like, as far as where we stand, like, as far as reaching that goal? And then I didn't know if that was in our goals at the end of the document as well. If there's efforts being made to,
Like a benchmark of how far we are right now.
yeah, that might be interesting and
I can
useful.
find that out.
Okay.
I had that same one. The other piece I had about the last sentence on this page, that we're going to save X amount of dollars. I'm not sure if that fits here. I like the value of it, but I'm not sure if it fits for the purposes of this document. right, moving on to 4.5. So at the top, communication services. Chris?
I think Charter's just as major in telecommunications as AT&T. I wouldn't call them out as the only one. Most people I know, if they do have a landline, they'll have it through their cable supplier anymore versus AT&T. So I'd at least say, that there's two major telecommunication providers and have both AT&T and Charter talk about them.
I didn't understand if the second sentence was adding to that piece about the infrastructure and
Well, it's inaccurate.
stuff for the city versus city residents.
Yeah, and that's not clear, because if you read it, that provide everything to the city, you're reading this, you're assuming the city of Monona, not
Yeah.
the city facilities.
And that's where I had a question about, was this intended to be the city as a whole geographic or the city as an entity?
I will have to check with the media coordinator on that, but
Well, but what's our document? Our document should be communication services, I would think, for the city of Monona, because this is our comprehensive plan. So I agree that we should talk about both the providers and what telecommunications available. Somewhere in the document might be appropriate, say AT&T provides it to the city of Monona, but it's not really germane to what the document is. It's a good thing to know, but maybe not in the comprehensive plan.
I agree that it should be geographically.
Yeah.
All right. Any other information and communication services? The second to last paragraph in this section, the very last sentence of the muffin effort improves blah, blah, blah. It seems like that either needs a lot more information or to be taken out. Especially economic development. Nowhere in here is it connecting how this muffin supports that. I understand that it can, but you would have a lot more information to make that linkage for that, as well as education.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if others oppose that. Rob? Is that a hand?
Nope.
Oh, it was.
Sounds like something Muffin would like to have in there, though.
Yes.
It's a good sales point for them.
Yes, absolutely. I would tack on, a bunch of other great things at the end. Go to 4.2, city facilities. Anything on the end of this page?
I'm really unclear on where we start and stop on it, because I understand city facilities are buildings and everything, but then we talk about the community pool. Well, if we talk about the pool, then should we talk about the skate park and the tennis courts and the ball fields and all these other things? And is this the place to get into it? So I'm not sure when I see city facilities, what that is that supposed to mean? Infrastructure, including everything, or is it just the buildings? I don't know what we're trying to get to. If we want to include the pool, we have a lot of other things we should include.
Was the pool its own property, or is it part of a park? Because that would be the difference between the skate park. Isn't that part of a greater park? It's an element within the park. Is the aquatic center a more standalone entity? It's just a question. I don't know.
It's a good question. Would it be the aquatic center because it has its own building? Would that be included in this? I mean, I don't know, but reading it, it was like either didn't go far enough or it went too far, and I wasn't sure which one.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, though. Where do you stop and start?
I think the pool is such a focal point for the community and quite a highlight. I mean, communities all have parks and they've got their ball diamonds, but a community pool is a big deal. So I think it's worth identifying separately, like it is.
Another one that jumped out at me was Public Works. I mean, this is describing this piece, and then it was, is this section intended to talk about city facilities that are places that you would go for service, and you wouldn't go to the Public Works building?
It's still a community facility. I think
Yeah.
it should be mentioned, and you do go there for lawn waste drop-off, things like that.
True.
But it's certainly one of our facilities, a major one.
And you'd have to identify it separately then in that sentence with referencing the city center, however.
Yeah, maybe a different paragraph even. You know, another city facility is the public works garage.
I wonder if there's a way, I wonder what the prior one has looked like. Do you have that one? Not that.
Have we mentioned how quickly we did the prior one when there was a deadline?
True. So that might not be the best one to look at.
It was starting from scratch and trying to put all this in and hit the smart growth deadline. It was,
Under community facilities, the old plan lists city center, city hall, community center, senior center, library, technology, parks, forestry, public swimming pools, healthcare, childcare, cemeteries, post office, schools. Okay, so those are all under the community facilities section. So some of those don't make sense, like healthcare facilities, but I don't know if that provided any clarity.
no, but I agree that public works should be noted somewhere somehow. That's a facility, city facility.
Yeah, and it does get tricky because 426 is about the library, but then we've mentioned the library there. So I wonder if there's a way that either we can be much more descriptive of what all the city-owned and operated facilities within the city are in a simple categorized way, or we highlight what it is that gets addressed in this section.
Perhaps if they're important enough to have in here, they should each then have a subsequent little 4 point whatever to say just a little brief description of each one. Perhaps 4.21 is just a listing of the major city facilities, and each subsequent one could have a little blurb.
Yeah, I can do that.
I agree, we shouldn't pull one out and talk about it and not the rest.
All right.
That would allow me to look into one other section that I don't think the fire chief got into at all, and that is the potential need for a future fire station.
That would be good in a comprehensive plan. That'd be good to talk about.
I wonder if there's a way to reference the facility study, the Bray study.
Well, if we break it up, there will be one for the police and fire departments, and that'd be a great place to talk about it.
And that Bray study also went into some of the concerns about this community center, senior center, a few other elements that it might be able to touch upon pieces of those.
Can we just call it major city facilities? I mean, I don't really see why Public Works has to be in here,
Really?
frankly.
That's a pretty major facility.
Well, but it's not, it isn't something that the public is going to
I
particularly
say
be
as a
interested in.
sales tool, I mean, it's probably the most important, but yet as a sales tool, it's the least important.
Well, the public doesn't go to a lot of the stuff we're talking about. They don't go to the ATC or whatever substation, but the public does go here for yard waste drop off, and it's a facility. We take care of our vehicles, and there's some communities leave a lot of their equipment sitting out on a gravel yard. I'd argue I have a pretty major investment in that facility.
Well, and it appears as if 4.2, the bigger piece is really about facilities throughout the community, and then the smaller elements are breaking up into different pieces, so there might be ways for some of the more major and minor things to have a place in.
Maybe.
It looks like maybe a few different ways to organize it and give it a shot.
Yes.
422, or so page 46, I'm sorry. At the top is child care facilities. Chris?
So when you touched on it, I don't know why we bring in private facilities to our community facilities comprehensive plan, and if we do, where would we stop? I see we have childcare, we have healthcare, and we have further down we have cemeteries, but there's a lot of other things that are important.
Education too.
Education is public though.
Well, we refer to the private one.
Yeah, because you have the public education, so you talk about the private school, it's available for whatever. I just don't feel like, I know we had it included last time, but that doesn't make it right. Unless there's something in the smart growth documents that ask you to talk specifically about healthcare, I'm not sure why we start including private providers in the community, the title of this is community facilities and utilities.
The statute requires you to inventory cemeteries, healthcare, childcare. Those are
They
called
do?
out specifically. It's
Okay,
in the
well, that's the
statute
reason we
here.
put it in then.
But then whether it's private or public, this is also a Department of Administration document, and it says even where a service or facility is provided by a separate jurisdiction or private entity, it must still be addressed. One of the important purposes of this element is to explain how your community functions, and relying on other jurisdictions or the private sector may be an important part.
And they ask specifically for health care?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's why it's in there then. Doesn't have to make sense.
That's true. The 422 suggestion I had was actually to strike the first sentence and change the second one to be the State of Wisconsin Bureau of blah, blah, blah. And 423. I'm wondering if there's a way to, the last sentence there about there are several different types of private doctor offices. I wonder if there's a way to change it to talk about there are several private healthcare facilities or offices, because having a small list of those items, we leave out a larger subset. But if it can't be done, it's not the end of the world for that piece. Because I think what we're saying is there are two major clinics and there are also some individual providers.
Yeah, I think in this case specifically, those are two major ones, and if you take that out, then it's very generalized and almost provides no information.
424,
What did we decide?
it was a minor
Oh, okay,
edit that
all
I
right.
found for the
Okay.
revision, and Sonny can take it or leave it if she wants. 424, public safety. The only, well, nothing to, all right. The school resource officer, I think there, in addition to those two pieces, I think there is a additional kind of reason and presence. And I'm not sure if this was just pulled from their site or if this was also given to the chief for some additional edits, and this is what was provided.
The chief reviewed this information. So are you saying there's another officer that's missing from this?
No, with it ending through preventative education and increased communications, that leaves me really wondering what the school resource officer does. Because I'm not sure they're providing necessarily preventative education all the time. I think they're part of preventative as well as responsive to events and increased communication between somebody and something. So I'm not sure if it's community and school. There are some additional information that might be helpful.
Just clarify.
And then the last sentence, going back to earlier when we talked about all the equipment we own, I'm not sure if the last part about the department currently has 2 engines and a platform ladder. And I would love to hear some other opinions on this. That I think this is just a moment in time, and describing all these pieces of equipment will be quickly out of date. And I'm not sure if it adds to this section.
I believe that it's general enough to include, and it explains what our level of service is for the fire department. I think it's rare for a community of our size to have the platform ladder truck. I'm not positive, but I think it's general enough where it doesn't change every year. If we do periodic updates more frequently than every 10 years, then that would be something we could catch easily.
I kind of like having it in there, and I see what you're saying with, we don't need to know how many street sweepers we have, or this is a little more important, and as a community member, I don't know, I think having an idea of what type of resources we have is useful, even if it will need to be updated in 10 years.
So the piece that jumped out at me more for this section would be we don't just provide EMS, we provide for example, we provide a paramedic level response, which is a very big distinguishing kind of piece about the level of service we provide our community. And I could be on board with having some description of if the elements that we're describing that we own are similar to that of like we provide basic EMS or we provide paramedic. Those are two distinct levels of service, and if this description of fire equipment does the same thing, I'm happy with it, and I'm okay. So maybe the chief can help us just clarify that section a little bit.
Okay.
And see if he says it does, then I'm fine with that as well. Any other information in this section? Seeing none, 425. Chris?
I find it very controversial or confrontational the way it's worded. I'd like, instead of saying that the district is divided into two halves, I'd like to say the district is a joint district comprising of, and we have the city of Monona, village of Cottage Grove, and a large percentage of the town of Cottage Grove, and I believe we have a small percentage of the town of Blooming Grove also in our district. Or
That's correct. It's a very small percentage with no enrollments,
right.
And with the town of Blooming Grove dissipating in the near future.
But school districts don't dissipate with boundaries for municipal boundaries. The school district boundary still stays the same. There's Sun Prairie School District in Madison. There's Madison School District in Verona. I mean, school district boundaries don't change when municipal boundaries do, which I think a lot of people don't realize.
So even if the town of Blooming Grove ceases to exist?
There would have to be an action to change the school district boundary. Now, perhaps Madison will request that. Perhaps Monona and Cottage Grove would accommodate it. Perhaps they wouldn't. I don't know the answer to that. But that's why I think it's good to have it archived in a record here that there is a part of it that is in the Monona Grove School District. But I think calling it a joint district and calling out the partners is a lot nicer than. And then in the second one where you list all the buildings, I think we should still list the fact of Nichols School, which doesn't I wouldn't say it doesn't currently house students. I think they have some alternative education there, but I'd say the district also owns the old Nichols School building, which houses the district offices. So they just remodeled that. And some, what do you want to call it, ancillary
21.
ancillary programs, or you want to call out which others?
Alternative programs, alternative high school
Right.
programs.
But it's still another school building that's in the community.
The other suggestion I had in the first sentence or first paragraph is that last sentence about open enrollment, to strike that unless there's objection to that. So I see this first sentence saying is, hey, MGSD serves these geographic locations. The last sentence is about folks outside of those geographic locations attempting to open and roll through a process. I'm not sure if that fits here for our purposes.
Can't anyone ask to open enroll in any school district?
You can.
So it's nothing specific to us.
All right. Any other edits?
She's just trying to find that second sentence that will help her out in that first paragraph. I know what's going on.
Yeah. All right. So top of page 47. See no others. Underneath the long range growth study, I have a suggestion about when it talks about over the next 20 years with almost all of that growth to almost all of the anticipated growth occurring in Cottage Grove, and the student population in Monona portion of the district is projected to remain mostly stable, and I would end there and strike the rest. Is a suggestion. So for comments on that, we'll go to 426 regarding the library.
That's great.
the last sentence or about the Friends of the Public Library. If we are going to add that, we are going to want to make sure that the other groupings that have friends groups like fire and senior center and folks that we listed, either that or we delete it from here to keep some consistency across.
I think we could add it.
Add it to all the other groups. So I suggest if there are other groups that are being listed, that we just double check with the department heads to make sure that if there is a nonprofit group associated with them, that we add that piece to it. People are okay with that?
I like having it in. It's kind of the character of Monona, the hometown, everyone helping, all the different areas. I like having it in the comprehensive plan.
All right.
Yeah, the only question is, some of the other support may not be organized groups, corporations, or this was, I think the Friends of is a nonprofit corporation
Yep.
organized for the purpose of supporting the library. I don't know about some of the other support organizations.
Yeah, good distinction. So if there are more officially organized, I think we have an easier time listing them. If it's a looser group of committed folks getting together to help, it might be a little bit more challenging to add that. All right. And the 427, there's not a whole lot you could change on that. I'm sure we can find
Wondering
something.
why it's in there, but I guess we have to.
I think we have to list it, so we get there. Moving on to 4.2, Parks and Rec, and 4.2.1, the Community Center. Any questions, comments on that? All right, seeing none, I haven't got to this section yet, so I'll get you my notes later. And then 4.2.2, the public swimming pool, goes on to the next page, 4.8. Seeing no suggestions on that, we'll go to 4.2.3, the Parks and Open Space section. Chris?
Sonia, is this another section that's required in this section? Because I thought we had parks in another one of our elements of the comprehensive plan. Am I wrong?
You're correct, it's reviewed in depth in another section.
In depth. I mean, we went beyond,
Parks is required in this element.
but it is required. Okay, so we cut and paste the generic thing into here before is what we probably did too then. Okay. Just curious, it just seemed redundant when I read it.
It seems like the only thing that jumps out at me, and maybe it's just to double check with the most recent version of the Parks and Open Space Plan. I thought we had potentially added or modified one of the titles of or categories. I can't remember if we talked about nano parks. There was some updated language that was being considered, and just for consistency between our plans.
I took this out of that plan, but actually now that you mention that, Jake doesn't have the final version for me yet, so I'll check when he gets that to me.
Other comments on page 4.8 or 4.9? Seeing none, we'll go on to page 4.10, goals, objectives, and policies. See no suggestions there.
Just going back to that declaration or that commitment we had to that 25 by 25.
About where it fits here is the question.
Yeah, I don't know where it fits in, but maybe it should be a goal since it was one we've already committed to.
Probably under goal 4.2, under objective 4.2.1, somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, how about some of the other goals, objectives, or policies? Seeing none. Anything for the rest of the document? Anybody want to go back to a section? No? Are you sure? So the plan for this, Sunny, is?
So my suggestion would be that I can make all these changes and rework some things and then present it to everybody as part of the complete draft. If you want to see it again as a standalone element, I can do that too.
What are people's wishes?
I don't think that's
I think
necessary. I think
complete
we can come with
draft would
the
be
final
fine.
document.
Final document?
Final
Document? Chris and Rob?
Yes.
I'm just thinking about all the reading we're going to have to do on that final document, how long you're going to give us for that?
It can be flexible.
More than 2 days?
A lot easier to read it than it is for Sonia to put it together.
It is.
I'll tell you that.
It is.
That is true. Thank you for all your hard work on this. All right, we are on to 7A. Staff report.
The next meeting is July 13th, so we have an extra week in there with the 5 Mondays this month. Signage for 103 West Broadway, the new building with Qdoba and the Mr. Brew's Tap House. Let's see. Possible childcare facility zoning application to lease a space back by the post office in the multi-tenant center there. I was out on vacation last week, but Royal Capital Group contacted other staff saying that they'd be ready for the July 13th meeting. So if you are on the fence about attending, I'd encourage you to be at that meeting so we can have a full group to make a decision. But I don't know that for sure yet, so possibly July 13th.
Are you able to comment on what we would be reviewing? Is that is that just for a public hearing and discussion phase, or would that be for action?
I don't know. A lot of it depends on whether or not they've been able to secure control of the property.
Well, they wouldn't come back without that, would they?
Um,
I mean, isn't that kind of where it was left, that they need to have control of all of that?
Kind of opens
And it all
another
has to be
can of
planned.
worms, but that's a decision that we'll make with the chair and the city administrator and the city attorney to decide how many hearings there are.
I can't imagine we have enough information on anything that's going to be presented right now that we'd be ready for action on a project of that scope. I can't imagine. We haven't had a version that's had a favorable response. There's going to be major changes, and we haven't even delved into details. So it would be. I don't want to say unprecedented, but for a project of that scope, I don't think we've ever come through and run it through on one hearing with that much information, that much unknown still out there.
All right.
Noted.
And what else?
Nothing new from Summit Credit Union. Schluter Park is another one that's been through a pre-hearing conference with Plan Commission. That project was delayed at City Council, so it'll be a while, I believe, before it comes back. On the comprehensive plan, we have implementation element, which is the last formal element. Work on that future land use map that the subcommittee started on, and we'll work on finalizing the draft plan as we move into late summer, fall. And once we're done with that, we can start on the sign code.
All right.
Yes. And then this Wednesday, just for your information, MMSD will hold an open house on their new pump station on East Broadway, and that's this Wednesday, the 24th at 11 a.m.
All right.
Is it operational?
I believe so.
Lovely pre-lunch itinerary.
Yeah, I'm saving that email for hey, the first time I've ever been invited to something like that. So, all right, moving on to 7B, Commissioner request for information. Griff, start down there.
Move adjournment.
Oh, well, hang on. Do you have any questions for folks?
No, sir.
Chris? I had one small one, and maybe I just missed something. The digital message board at Broadway and Monona Drive. Do we know what happened to it?
It's being moved to the corner of Nichols and Monona Drive.
Actually, it's not anymore.
Nope, it's not.
Because at council, we said no. Because, go ahead, sorry.
Monona State Bank at Bridge Road and Broadway will be using it to upgrade their digital message sign.
Oh.
What? So what's going in the hole on Broadway?
A static
Monona?
message.
A what?
A static message.
This is from the DOT winning and saying we can't have that message board that close to the exit.
Correct. Threatens our federal funding if we keep it there.
Okay. All right.
And the static message is gonna be what?
Turn right, no.
It's actually going to come to Plan Commission for your review.
I don't think they'll let you craft that message. Because it'd be probably pointed to the DOT.
All right, now we are on the most important item, unless,
Now I'll move adjournment.
there we go, in a second.
Second.
Okay, dueling seconds, you'll pick one. All right, all those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
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 Opposed? Excellent, thank you, guys.
Make sure you put in the minutes that he ran this meeting in under an hour.
You risk doing that, sometimes then you get